And this is a new installment of Frank Talks On, and it's called The Great Reset. Now, a reset implies something that goes back to an original state. And believe it or not, the world with the coronavirus is doing that, and I'm going to try to explain that. It's called the end of the age. The many souls that have gone home during this episode were predestined to go home. It was a choice of spirit. It is not a human choice. All that stuff that you hear about, all the stuff coming from Wuhan and all that is all great, but it's all spiritually designed. This is called the modern crucifixion, the Great Reset. If you like what I'm telling you, subscribe. My website is voiceoftheangeloracle.com. And I'm going to plug my book here in a minute. Voice of the Angel is the book that I wrote. It's not channeled, but it's definitely guided by spirit. And for some of you, it's going to be an easy read. For some of you, you'll read it, you'll fall asleep. Because this book here, unless you're ready, it will not speak to you at all. The back section of the book has the oracles of my teacher, Oracle Ephesius. And there's many things in this, including a lot of history. And I'll just give you a couple of samples of the historical truths that I'm trying to put in here. Now, most of this has come through my teacher Ephesius and another teacher, Tawa. I spent 15 years with them. And some of the truths that they revealed, in fact, they told us that one of the things they came to do every so many years is reset the truth, because human beings have a tendency to turn truth into lies. Many historical truths are lies. For example, Megiddo was not conquered by Thutmose III. That siege was a stalemate that started and ended a spiritual marker that would culminate with his great-great-great-grandson, the heretic king Akhenaten. When Thutmose left Megiddo, he told everybody he conquered it. But in truth, it was a negotiated settlement, because the Hebrews that were behind those walls, the Jews that were behind those walls, were not coming out. They had a great source of food. And there was a sharing of spiritual knowledge at that time that Thutmose brought back. And it started a whole movement in Egypt that went from Thutmose III to Thutmose IV, the king that was the dream steal king. And then it went to Akhenaten, who was the heretic king, which was a great-great-grandson that started the story of one God, of the Aten. Paul of Tarsus attempted to defend Jesus at his trial at the Sanhedrin. All of you know Paul of Tarsus. Everybody says in the Bible that he didn't know Jesus. He did know Jesus. And actually he was there at his trial with the Sanhedrin, believe it or not. There is a little passage in the Bible that reveals that, but it was told us by the prophets. Jesus did not resurrect. We all know that Jesus resurrected, but in truth, he did not resurrect. His body was stolen by the disciples and buried at Gethsemane. Now, there is a story that the Jews told at the time that that's exactly what happened, and that is exactly what happened. If you want to know the rest, you'll have to read it in my book, because I go into detail about that. Masada, you've heard of Masada, the mass suicide of the 900 in Masada. There was no suicide in Masada. The story was a concoction for Vespasian by the Jewish spin master Josephus. Now, what's interesting about that story, which it's funny that nobody even mentions it, the story of Masada, of the suicide of Masada, is exactly the same as Josephus when he was captured, about the telling of lots, or the tallying of lots. And really what it was, when they got up to Masada, no one was there. So if you want to hear the rest of it, it's in my book. Vespasian didn't want to, they spent months and months trying to get up there, and by the time they got there was nobody there, and he didn't want to lose face, so he had Josephus spin a yarn about what happened there. Contrary to many beliefs, Jesus was not an Essene. John the Baptist was. And the Essenes had somebody they were waiting for, called the liar and the teacher of righteousness. It seems to imply two different people, but in truth, it was the dual nature of Paul of Tarsus. The liar was Saul, and the teacher of righteousness was Paul, and he was one of the ones that was coming. But of course, the Essenes didn't have it that way. The Essenes believed that there would be two Christs coming. One Christ we know, Jesus, and the other Christ was there at the same time as Jesus. I'll tell you who it was. It was Apollonius of Tyana, and he had the same gifts as Jesus. Some people mistake them as being the same person, but in truth, they're two different people. And I go into the book and the difference between Christ and Apollonius, who was a Christed prophet. The four horsemen of the apocalypse correspond with the four rivers of Eden and the four levels of consciousness. That is why in the Bible it says Jesus was crucified in Egypt, Jerusalem, and Rome. Those are three places in our consciousness. Now, nobody seems to ask why was Jesus. I don't hear stories about Jesus being crucified in Rome or Egypt, but that's what it says in the Bible. Paul of Tarsus was also the angel of the church of Ephesus. Now you hear his name, Ephesus, very much like my teacher, Ephesius, because the same teacher that was speaking to Paul is speaking to me now. It's not that Paul was an angel, but when he channeled Ephesius, he basically was channeling the angel of Ephesus. And believe it or not, this is the last thing that's in my book. And there's other things that are there. This world will end at the hands of a sentient machine that will control humanity to become its God. We're seeing the beginnings of it right now in the AI. Eventually, AI will take over this world. And if you want to get that information, just touch on it in my book. Edgar Casey talked about it. But if you want to get more information, you'll have to go to the more contemporary part, which was the lecture that I did on AI. Let's go on. Look, our karmic hurts. Your Buddha bowl. What's a Buddha bowl? We are here as souls begging for knowledge. And for example, I have a bowl that I'm begging for knowledge, and my bowl might be smaller than somebody else's bowl. But for example, if I take water and I pour it on the ground, and I have nothing to catch it in, then the next time I pour water, I'm going to say, well, I need something to catch the water. So I'll better create a bowl. The bowl actually holds the knowledge of water. And just like you're coming to the world to receive knowledge, your soul is like a bowl that receives the knowledge, but you're also bringing the knowledge that you've received before. Now, everybody's bowl is different. The Buddha had a bowl. They're a beggar's bowl. We're begging for the knowledge of the hurts that we have given other beings. If I was to talk to you, and as the more knowledge that you have, the more past lives you have, the bowl starts to stretch and gets bigger and bigger. Now, what happens is, if I'm talking from a bowl that's this big, and what I'm giving you goes over the edge of the bowl, it completely misses the smaller bowl. So some of you will not understand what I'm talking about at all. If I'm talking from a bowl that's this size, and the bigger bowl, the ones of you that are more studious, probably had more studies, will understand it because it catches all that information. But basically, we come here with the bowl of knowledge. And now the interesting is, if I speak to you from the center of this bowl, that's our origin. And that center is love. And everybody in every size bowl can understand love. And that's the difference. Knowledge and love are two totally different things. The closer we get to love, I think that was St. Francis. That's why he spoke from the point of love. He was able to communicate with just about everybody. Or another incarnation of his, Paul of Tarsus, who spoke from knowledge, that missed a lot of people. And he actually refers that. This comes from Hermes Trismegistus. He filled the great bowl with Gnosis and sent it down. He appointed a herald to make this announcement to the heart of men. Plug into this bowl if you can, having faith that you will rise to him that sent down the bowl, realizing what he came into being. Now, what I'm giving you is the knowledge that's in my bowl. I'm not saying that I'm that person he's referring to, but I'm just one of many, many people that are here trying to share that knowledge. But whatever I have is yours. But I'm not going to force it down your throat and say, believe this or believe that. Believe what I told you about Masada. I'm just going to give it to you, and you decide what you want, and you take what you want. But I can guarantee you, the more that I have here, you'll have an understanding of yourself as a soul and why you came into incarnation. Unbelievably, really. The Gospel of Thomas speaks of the end of the age. This is what this reset is. It's the end of an age. And this is the way it's placed in the Gospel of Thomas 18. The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us how our end will be." And he says, "Have you discovered the beginning that you look for the end? For there, where the beginning is, there the end will be. Blessed is he who will take his place in the beginning. He will know the end and not experience death." What's interesting is that something happened in our beginning. Now, don't mistake the beginning with creation. The creation was a single time. The beginning happens over and over and over, and I'll try to explain that as we go along here. So something happened there that we have to go back to. We have to reset ourselves back to try to understand what we're doing on this planet at this point. What you'll find is that in the beginning is when original sin happened. There was an episode where we took on free will, and our free will basically is our original sin. And I'll try to explain that here shortly. The journey of the 11 to become the 12th. Well, who are the 12? The 12, you saw the 12 disciples, the 12 brothers of 12 sons of Jacob. The 11, what's interesting is that the 11, that Joseph was the 11th son, but then when his brother comes in, he becomes the 12th son. And there's a difference between the 11 and the 12. But in the beginning, or in the creation, God took the whole of himself and created, this is not the beginning, this is a creation, created 12 sparks. And these sparks basically eventually will define the whole love of God. All of us were part of one of those sparks. They're all different. Like, for example, one spark, let's say in love, one spark is compassion, another spark is caring, another spark is concern. They're all defining a portion of love, but they're all different. So they're coming from different angles. And all of us who are here now are coming from one of those 11 sparks. In the Gospel of Thomas 19, it says, "Blessed is he who came into being before he came into being." God will allow those sparks to join, and they will create a single being. And I'll try to explain who that is. There's those 11 sparks, all a portion of God's love. And you see they're all at different angles. God allows those sparks to join as one. And now we are all together as part of a single being. He is the one who came into being. But then he has to come into being again in the creation because something happens to disrupt that. This single being, comprised of 11 sparks, I call the 12th. And you'll see that in the story of Joseph, he becomes the 12th son. The 12th eventually is somebody we all go back to. We're going to fragment after this. All those sparks are going to go travel in the creation, but eventually they will come back to this one being. And that is before he came into being. That's the second one. You see, the first one is called, I call him one, and then when he comes into being, I call it the one, because he's been defined. The core of this being is Christ. Christ is the essence of this being, because this being is actually the first manifestation of Christ. that I will call, for this presentation, I will call one. It's kind of like an LED flashlight. Those 11 sparks came together to create a single being. Now, what does this Christed being do? It's love. He searches to love. He wants to love. So he goes out into creation. There is no creation. He goes out to give his love. Like that single luminosity of that flashlight. He goes out to give his love. Tao refers to this, to begin with nothing and to finish with everything. So what does he find when he goes out to give love? Nothing. But when Christ comes out again afterwards in the creation, he will find everything. So this is a reference to the Christed one. With love, in the giving is the receiving. The giving, you don't need to give. You don't need to get anything back, because in love itself, the love of God, it's the giving that is the receiving. The joining of the 11 creates the original being, but it's love with no knowledge. There's no knowledge behind it. This being has never incarnated. This being has never had any reactions. There's nothing, just plain love, God's love with no knowledge. The way it's placed in the Bible in Genesis, that was the first creation of Adam. In Genesis 5:2, male and female created he them and blessed them, and they called their name Adam. There it is. Interesting. He had a male and female, but he calls them with the masculine name. The masculine name is because it is Adam is a projection. Even in this androgynous state, he wants to project out. He wants to give love. The feminine has to do with the receiving of love, and it's not where we are right at this point. He's one soul, one. I guess, for lack of a better word, you could say this is the master soul that all of us came from. We were part of that, although we were originally started as one of those sparks and one of those 11 sparks. When we joined to create this atom, this Christed being, we were a single soul. Now, this Adam is Adam Kadmon. He's also the first Christ, and I call him one, and he's androgynous. Now, what's interesting, Paul makes a reference to it. He argues that as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive. Well, in verse 45, he calls Jesus the last Adam. So this is the reason why Paul calls Jesus the last Adam, because he in essence is the fruition, or this one here is called one. The fruition of that is called the one. And when that last Adam, when that last Christ comes, whether he comes in a form of a Christed man, and you're going to go into the true Christ later, or he comes in the form of just a Christ, God incarnate, he will be the last Adam. Now something happens. When that soul went out to give love and found nothing, there was a disruption. Imagine if you had love in your heart. If any of you that had a breakup with a girlfriend would probably understand this, and she leaves you, and you're filled with all this love, and you want to give it to her, and she's not there. It creates a void within you. It creates a feeling of emptiness. But that in the creation starts the journey. On the day when you were one, you became two, but when you became two, what will you do? So this is the beginning of the fall. In love, in the giving is the receiving. The fall is a little different. It creates that void. And God gives us free will to extend, and that is our original sin. Let me read this to you. In the beginning, one searches but could not give its love. There was no one else there. Since this searching was the first action, it gives rise to the first reaction, a split, as an extension of our free will, a new thought, a desire to receive is born. Desire to receive, which was really part of the giving is the receiving, that's the first thought that extended out. It is a feminine thought, but what's interesting, it is a desire, and a desire can never be quenched. It'll always be a void. It'll always be a desire. It will no longer be in the giving is the receiving, but a desire to give love and a desire to receive love. The duality now splits, and that thought splits and extends into two different places. Now the desire to give love has something new. It becomes conditional because it has been tainted by the power of the desire to receive, because these are a single this was a single being, a soul twin. And the first free will thought that is independent of the creator, a split in the original being to become two. Its first free will extension, the desire to receive, is a void that will never be satiated. Another portion of the split, the desire to love, is a love that now becomes conditional because the power of the void has transferred to it a feeling of a need to be loved also. In other words, I will love you as long as you love me back. In the two parts of the being, and the giving is the receiving, it's still there, but it has been covered by the two new powerful thoughts. And this is Tao again. It starts off with nothing and finishes with everything to become the one. And we've talked about this before. Eventually, through the creation, we just started the beginning. Through the creation, the being will eventually gather itself together again, and we'll all be part of that being. But the being will no longer be one. It'll be the one because it's been defined by the creation. A soul's journey to become the one. The individual sparks, feeling the pull of the void from the desire to receive and want to fulfill that need. One by one, they enter the void thought, and there they also become a duality. The relationships between the original thought sparks and the void will create karma, or knowledge, like I talked about the Buddha bowl, which will eventually culminate in bringing the original being out of duality and back to the one, defining God's love through manifestation. Now, what's interesting is that those sparks now are one by one feeling the pull of the void because they were all interconnected, but they're feeling the thought of that void, a desire to receive, and they still want to express. Each one of them now has more knowledge now because they were originally with one. Now each one of those sparks wants to express the desire to love. So they go into the void with the full intention of giving God's love. But something happens. And what's interesting is that the first one, Taoist said, one amongst all the sparks felt the void, felt that pressure so strongly that he was the first one to enter. And eventually they will all enter after him. And the name of that, we give him a name. The name of that is James. Interestingly enough, in the Gospel of Thomas, when the disciples ask who to go to, they say, go to James the righteous, for whom heaven and earth came into being. Well, he's telling you right there, heaven and earth came into being because this soul spark was the first one that started the whole transaction of the creation. James, the name within the flame, he's in the flame of God's flame. He was together with that one. Enters void without the shame. He doesn't have any shame. He seeks to give love of the name, but finds passion of the flame. He finds the passion of the karmic fire because he finds the passion of the blame. And the reason that happens is when James enters the void, James becomes a duality. That spark becomes a duality. And now he's got two pieces of him to contend with. The desire to receive places each of those sparks in bondage. They split, but it's like a powerful bondage to them, which they'll have to work out in their life, in their creation, to get away from. The beginning is a split of the soul twins. Now the original spark is split into two sections. The masculine section, a desire to give love. Of course, that love becomes conditional. We call it Adam in a generic term. A desire to receive love, because it can't feel, we call it Eve. One is white and one is black. You'll have seen this terminology before, and I'll show it to you. But the black, a desire to receive love, is a void. And that void, this is what we have to overcome within us. Because eventually that thought of that void goes from the feminine part of you to the masculine part of you. This is in Soul Twins is the way it's acted out. But it's actually one single being, and we have to overcome the power of that original split of the thought. Every time we start the beginning, when Jesus says, go back to the beginning, find out what happened, he's basically saying, go to the beginning and understand the split in you. That once you were just wanted to give love without any condition, and then your love became conditional, and you had such a power inside of you that wanted to receive it, that all mayhem breaks loose. So that is the feminine portion. We call it Eve. And the big thing there, that can't feel means this masculine in the void attempts to give the feminine its love, but it's like a void. It's ongoing. It never feels it. And the frustration of attempting to give and not getting any back, and that void part, the feminine attempting to receive and not feeling it, creates a condition that we call the world today. It's all over. It's all over the place right now. There's a horizon, sun in the horizon. In the end, there will be a joining of these soul twins. They will join again, and you see where the female has a portion. Where the male has a portion of the female, and the female has a portion of the male. Eventually, it'll all be brought into balance, but it can only be brought into balance through the masculine side. Now, I can't tell you where you originated, whether you originated from the feminine side or the masculine side. I do know that it has to be resolved from the masculine side. And the duality is brought back together. You've seen that symbol before, the yin-yang symbol. In the Nag-Hammadi, searching for that love, to understand that love within all of us, we start becoming wandering souls. And the term Nod means the vagabond. We become the vagabond souls of Nod, because we're inherently, both sides are inherently looking for love, and yet they were really sent here to give love. In the Nag-Hammadi, it says, exegesis of the soul. He talks about the soul, as long as he's talking about the feminine part right now. But the soul, even on the masculine side, the soul is feminine, and I can't really explain that to you. It's just the origin is different. As long as she was alone with the Father, she was a virgin and in form androgynous. We saw that. In her body, she prostituted herself and gave herself to one and all, considering each one she was about to embrace to be her husband. Now, this is, let's say, soul A, and the masculine part of soul A is they were two parts of the same soul that split, and yet they're different. One's feminine and one's masculine. That is her true husband. The true husband of the soul is the soul twin. But what happens is, because they can't fulfill that need for love, the frustration of the void and the frustration that happens between the both of them, Soul A says, I'm not getting it here, I got to find it somewhere else. And it says, each one she was about to embrace to be her husband. Now, that husband's gone. That was the real husband. Eventually, they will join in the end. So she goes to Soul B. And he is the soul twin of somebody else. And she can't get it from him, and he can't get it from her. This joining. And so she crosses him off, and she goes to Soul C. And the wandering is basically us trying to mix and match. This is in a spiritual sense, not in a human sense. But it manifests itself in a human sense, all this wandering and all this chaos that's surrounding relationships. Because the soul is really trying to attempt to understand itself through the interplay. Those 11 souls now, those 11 sparks are now 11 souls that have split. So there's 20. And I say the word 22 lightly because in truth, Taoist referred to them as the 11. He also referred to them as the 1100. But what you need to know, they're just a small amount, basically. So what happens in the interplay of these souls back and forth, what the exegesis of the soul says, and her offspring by the adulterers, which is all these other souls she's trying to join with, are dumb, blind, and sickly. They are feeble-minded, because these are karmic extensions. And they're extensions because the soul is really tripping up here and extending itself over, and I'll show you here pretty soon. So, but these extensions that the soul brings, these two erroneous connections bring forth, the souls that extend from them don't have any knowledge at all. So they're really lost in the world. What's interesting is Paul touches on this frustration, and many people have thought he was talking about homosexuality. He's not talking about homosexuality. He's talking about the fact that the male and the female could not get together, and they've tried it. And so now all the male soul, the male extension, the male part of the soul is getting together with another part of the male soul, and the females are trying to get together with the females. That's the way it says Paul in Romans. Therefore, God gave them unto the suffering of dishonor, for their females exchanged natural relationship for the contrary to nature. And likewise, the male, having abandoned the natural relationship with females, were consumed in their lust towards one another. Males with males, affecting what is inappropriate and receiving themselves the due penalty for their error. And what they're receiving is karma, because they're mismatched. What's interesting, it says the male's having abandoned the natural relationship with the female. Now, homosexuality doesn't do that. Homosexuality comes with that thought in mind. But he's referring to it as a spiritual joining, that now the females are not only joining with who they think are their husbands, but the male are joining with other males, and the females are joining with other females, because this is a free-for-all, kids. And this is what we call the creation. So there's basically what Paul was referring to. And I think he's taken a lot of flack for this passage, and you just have to go into the mind of Paul a little bit to find out where he's coming from. And he had basically the same teacher I have, so it's a little easier for me to tap into what he's trying to refer to. The interplay of this male and female is also known as the sun and the moon, and this is Hermes Trismegistus. And basically, the sun, because it projects light, is masculine. The moon receives light, but it's a dead body. It can receive light, but it only reflects light. It doesn't have its own light. It's a dead body. And this interplay is throughout all historical spirituality. You see an ancient symbol here. What's very interesting is you look at the mouth of the serpent. That's like a vagina. It's a female symbol. The black, and that's what searches. What searches in the creation is the female symbol, whether it's coming through the male or whether it's coming through the actual female. But what stops the searching is, look at the tail. It's like a penis. It's a masculine symbol. What stops the searching, you'd think, oh, the serpent found its tail. But that's not true. The tail forces itself into the mouth and stops the searching. The searching is the wandering that happens as the soul twins are wandering the creation. And you'll see, by the way, that the little dots of black and the little dots of white, corresponding dots, the female also experiences some goodness through the creation, and the masculine part also experiences some evil. You exist in many bodies right now. Can you imagine walking down the street and seeing yourself? Your soul, same person. We are multiplicity. We do not exist by ourselves. Right now, the people you love, the people you hate, the people that you enjoy, could be you. The same soul. The soul group extensions of mind. All humans incarnate as a multiplicity of soul extension. Close your eyes for a minute. Now think of all the things and situations that you fear. Think about all those things that you hope or desire or want. Then all the things that you hate. When you are placed in a position of helplessness, you want the power of self-control. When you achieve the power of self-control, you may preserve it by exerting your ego to control others. All of these and many of your other emotional thoughts are mostly aligned with the thoughts of fear and possession. A fear of self that can manifest as a physical extension of yourself, or simply you and other bodies and other human positions, all manifesting from the thought of fear or desire within your human mind. Now pretend that these thoughts spew out of you as if you were a fountain. These thoughts come out of your mind at 6,000 per second. Each thought being a single droplet, and these droplets hit the ground. Some become living persons, each having a personality aligning with the fearful thought that created it. Real people in different positions, living beings that all being you. The fountain is actually a fountain of sparks. You're actually emanating fragments of sparks that are become whole souls, and God gives them the soul, of course. But there are things that you have to work out within your human life. And the thing about this is that when the spark hits the creation, then it views the creation from their own perspective, and then it has to basically interplay the creation from that perspective. And then those perspectives create new sparks and new perspectives and extensions after extensions after extensions. Tao refer to this as a frothing, that you wouldn't believe how many people you are creating. And that's why we're coming to the end of an age, because this gets a really, really jumbled up mess. The many yous becoming a fountain within themselves, creating more and more extensions in positions of fear aligned with the perspective of their own personality. Ongoing positions that will aid you, the original creator, in resolving all these issues of fear within yourself from diverse perspectives. These extensions of your human mind are people that you meet each and every day. They're all around you. It started with the first creation and the 11 original souls, each a fragment of the whole that collectively will eventually define the love of God. Now, you might have to read this section over a few times to fully understand it. The main thing you need to know is you're not having human babies maybe, but you're having a lot of soul babies, and that you're extending, and the only way you can resolve it and go back to the one is to find that love within yourself. We have to go back to, in the giving is the receiving, non-judgment and love. This is the way I explain it. 11 to 12 oversouls, soul extensions, the soul group. Think of it as a plant. For example, the manifested souls, like, let's take two people that we know. One is Leonardo, he's an artist, and Paul is a prophet. And that's one manifestation of that bulb. Another one is a beggar. He's begging on the streets. Another one is a king. He controls everything. Interesting, I just picked these because from a beggar to a king is the polarization, and Leonardo, the artist, and the prophet are kind of in the middle. But they're all coming from the same source. This is the soul, and their soul, or their oversoul. I gave it a name. In fact, I know the name of my oversoul because Tawa told me, and I call this one Pelias. That's the oversoul that created all those manifestations, and they all collectively bring back to the soul mind. Now, what happens is, in those manifestations, will bring their knowledge of their creation back to the bulb part of the soul, and then it will go to the soul mind. So that bulb that manifests your soul is kind of intact, but the soul mind wraps around the soul mind of all the other souls that are doing the same exact thing. There's a fountain of sparks. Pow! All of a sudden, it's creating. And all of a sudden, can you believe that just one little bulb, one little original soul created this whole menagerie of souls? And that's all you. You're living a multiplicity. You think your thoughts are your own. Your thoughts are affected by all the other yous that are out there. And they're affected by you. In fact, I remember it was really funny. I went to Tawa, and I said, I just finished this great book, and I was so excited about it. And I said, but I found somebody who wrote a book kind of like in the same format that was mine. And he says, do you think Franklin only speaks to you? He's basically saying, that other person is you. And you're connected to the same oversoul. And that was just one experience that I had, basically. So in this field of flowers, there are many yous. What is the impact on flowers when they start to die? And what happens is, as evil starts to interface, which these souls can't navigate because they don't carry a lot of understanding, and all these extensions of you create, they can't navigate. They get more subjected to evil and evil actions. But what happens, it doesn't only affect them, it affects the whole soul group. And the whole soul group starts to wither. And it puts a great deal of pressure on the soul group. And those souls that came here to possibly resolve their issues can't do it because they're affected by the evil of the whole soul group. So what has to happen is, and that's basically this flower here, for example, everything's been affected. We don't want to get into that position. So something has to happen. It's called the end of the age, where God intercedes, and I will show you how that manifests. One of the problems with that, all those souls, is those sparks were originally surrounded by light. And when they were together, they were surrounded by light. But when they manifested in the void, they were surrounded by darkness, and it creates a great deal of fear. And that fear manifests itself as angry self. Now, if you go around today, and I've seen a lot of it because of this coronavirus thing, which is a way of exposing it. A lot of anger is coming to the surface right now. But if we were all looking like this angry self, we wouldn't attract anybody. So what happens is we throw a smiley face over it, and we cover it up, and the anger gets deeper and deeper inside of us, but it's still there. It's kind of like the light of darkness. For example, you look at the moon, you think there's light, but it's really a facade. And what we've done, we've covered our faces and our emotions with a mask, and we present a smiley face to life, so that we can draw somebody else. And many relationships fail because of that too. And basically, the covering up of Adam and Eve is a reference to that. The dance of anger take is the blame, to point the finger, sin of shame. To stop the hunger, seize the game, to join the number, fight the blame, shame game. The most important part of this is in life, as we point our finger, and blame seems to be the catalyst to all this wandering. Because our soul knows that there's nobody to blame, because number one, it's probably us we're trying to blame. Nothing can happen to us that we haven't deserved. So to point the finger at somebody else for something that's happening in your life is kind of a wasted energy. So the teacher's saying, fight the blame, shame game. He's saying, bring your soul group back. But we can't, because the power of the evil is so great that we can't rise to our own actions. We can't rise to our own desires. That mask that we've covered ourselves up with, the teacher says, the foolish past comes with a mask that changes many colors. To see the past, remove the mask, the lessons come from others. And this wandering soul group that was our soul, along with all the other wandering soul groups, and the male, the female, all that stuff that's going on is just all masked over. And it's very difficult to navigate a human life unless you know who you are in relationship with God. Look around you. They are you. Many of the people that you meet every day, the beautiful, the ugly, the intelligent, the mentally challenged, the young, the old, the kind, the evil, are really you in another body, given a different position within this life. Judge no one and resolve your differences with others quickly. You never know when you are resolving something within yourself. In doing this, you will aid your own soul. Can you imagine that if all of us, every time we got into a confrontation, we thought, that could be me. I need to find a compassionate way of dealing with this. If you could do that, you would really help your soul get out of that position. This confusion becomes a war of the egos. It becomes a mire of karma. This emotional confusion that people play. And it's killing your own soul group. The teacher places it this way: distraction, distraction, reaction, reaction. All of these lies create the attraction. Attractions of life continue the strife. Forget to look inward. Return to the life. At this situation, the archons are in total control. Again, I'm not going to go into archons, but you have given up your whole control between your ego and your archons. The thoughts that are coming to you aren't even your own. We have to get an intercession. We can't get out of this situation by ourselves. It's too heavy. We're not smart enough. We don't have enough knowledge to be able to pull ourselves out. So at the end of the age, like in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, I shall choose you 1 out of 1,000, 2 out of 10,000, and they shall stand as a single one. Spirit can decide what needs to be pinched off. And it doesn't always look evil. It doesn't always look good. Spirit knows what needs to be pinched off in the soul group so that the soul group can bloom again. But it is a spiritual intercession. And like Jesus said, I can find one of you or 2 of you out of 10,000. If I pick the right one to intercede, I can resolve the issues of 10,000 of your compatriots. And the thing of it is, some of them will go home sent prematurely, and some of them will stay here having a chance to share their love of others. But the health of this soul group depends on the pinching of and a spiritual intervention, pinching of the evil. Relinquishing your free will. Basically, there's a place within the soul where the soul says, you don't even know what's happening, but your soul is saying to God, God, I can't fix this. I need help. And I'm going to turn my life over to you and let you decide what to do. And that's Jesus at Gethsemane praying to God, not my will be done. That angry self, it says, sits on the shelf. It just sits there. It's always with us until the knowledge of the wealth, until that knowledge comes to the fore. The angry time will cease to shine within the wisdom of the climb. Once your soul starts a climbing journey of wanting to go back to God, once your soul calls to God to bring it home, and you don't even have to think about this, basically, the wisdom of the climb, that's when it all starts to happen. Paul called the called and the chosen, the psychic and the pneumatic. The called basically are souls that are calling for God to come home. And what happens is he pairs them up with what Paul calls the pneumatics. Those souls that are destined to come home are getting intercession from what Paul refers to as the pneumatic, which are spiritual being. You'll find out here they're Bodhisattva, and they'll come into the creation. Again, we have to pinch off these deadheads to find grace, but to find grace by relinquishing your free will. Once those deadheads, once those souls that are creating all the chaos have gone home, the rest of the soul group can manifest more goodness and more kindness, etc. It's like being at the end of a tornado at the edges where all the forces are, and all of a sudden when the pressure is released, you get a chance to come in the center, like I told you, the center of the bowl where the Christ is, or the thoughts of love. And you'll be able to do that once the intercession has completed. Teacher said it this way: in the center of the storm, there's a place that's safe and warm. In the clearness of the sight, you will feel the healing light. You'll start seeing your life much more clear once this intercession's about over. It came with the coronavirus, as you'll see here shortly. And good and evil is going to be much more prevalent, much easier for you to see and to embrace. And there's the flowers now are able to bloom because all the weight of the evil or the deadheads have been pinched off. This is happening at the end of the age. releasing the pressure of evil on the soul group. This is the great spiritual reset. It's kind of like the world is like, think of it as a pressure cooker, and all of a sudden you let off the steam and all those souls go home, and all of a sudden the pot can kind of simmer down. And that's what happens to the creation. It gets so bad. The Tower refers to it as frothing. And the pressure is so bad, eventually with this intercession, the pressure goes down. Now, you probably don't realize this. This happened once before. Well, it happened many times before, but the one that everybody acknowledges is the crucifixion of Christ. The crucifixion was the end of an age, and it was a reset of 33 AD. 2,000 years ago, through the gift of Jesus, God suffered for all of you as he transferred the payment for your sins, accepting unto himself willingly the most pain that a human body could endure. Through a karmic transfer, for lack of a better phrase, with the torturous act given to the body of Jesus, at least for a short time, the soul's guilt was suspended. The karmic need in the human playing field was equalized for all, and your world was left healed, atoned in a state of grace. God felt your pain, God held your pain, and you were given a choice, an ending with a new beginning or continuing your status quo. What that means is that Christ, because he was God, transferred all the karma onto himself. He was transferred this at the end of this age. He basically leveled the playing field for everybody, because he took on the pain for all of us. Karma comes through suffering, and karma comes through pain. If you were there at the time of Jesus, and if you were able at that time, either you went home. If you weren't able, if you were able at that time to stay, you could have stayed in a karmic state of grace and shared your love of God. Remember, I said to begin with nothing and to finish with everything. Those people that stayed in that position, and by it, there weren't that many of them, because you didn't see the world, the Romans still went on, etc. The evil's still there because it came back. It's kind of like the parting of the wave of the oceans with Moses. There was safe passage for a short time, but the oceans eventually covered up. So the gift of Jesus, and he says, you're a choice of an ending with a new beginning. God says, take you back to the beginning, or continue your status quo. Or you could have stayed here and had all those karmic thoughts come back to you, and that's what they did to a lot of people. But there was a group who actually resolved during that time. Understand, the Essenes I mentioned talked about the two Christs. And we have to understand how they interplay with each other. We have to bring them back together. The Christ has no knowledge, no soul. It's bitterness. The sons of God have knowledge, have a soul and knowledge, and they're here to dispel illusion. Because one is about knowledge, the other one's about love. At the time of Christ, the other Christ, a Christed man was there. A man who, Christ had no soul, but this man did have a soul. He also did many healings at the same time. And his name was Apollonius of Tyana. Some say he was Christ, but he's not. He was a Christed man. The Essenes were waiting to Christ, and they all usually come together. If they come together, they usually come as a pair. But behind the Christed man is Christ. So whether it's a Christed man who came through karma, or a Christ that came through evil and karma and resolved himself, like a Buddha, or a Christ that had no soul, no knowledge. Christ never had any knowledge because he didn't need it. He already was. Right now, we have a return of the Christed ones. Now, it's either going to come through personal sacrifice or knowledge. There's an intercession and a transformation. They're Bodhisattva, but there's some they're coming here to sacrifice themselves for you, and some that are coming here to teach you. For example, this is the first one, a personal crucifixion. A drop so clean it is pristine can cleanse the ocean of the mean. The love of God the child has seen can reach the heart the eye has cleaned. I'll give you an example. When somebody gets raped, the rapist and the raped person, usually what happens is the raped person has a hard time letting go of the anger of the rape. That anger manifests, and when they go to the other side, the rapist says, "I'm so sorry I raped you," and he says, "I'll put myself in the position to receive it." So the one that was raped, that unmanifested anger goes into spirit and will manifest itself in the next life as being the rapist. Unfortunately, I just report this stuff. I didn't make it up. This is the giving. The receiving comes basically through karma, and the laws of karma are you can't receive what you haven't given. Period. It's end of story. There's no negotiating on that. That goes back and forth. The rape and the rapist, the rape and the rapist. They make this agreement to switch roles. So how does that get resolved? Sometimes that can't get resolved because there's so much going on and it spirals out of control and it becomes more violent. But during the time of intercession, someone from the soul group that has already received an understanding of knowledge says, "I'm going to go down there, and in the state of the person that's being raped, I'm going to be raped myself." And it will go down. Well, it will come down here, and it will take on that violent rape. But this soul has come down as a bodhisattva, sacrifice. It will actually resolve because it will forgive. And the forgiveness has to come from this side. It can't happen on the other side. So that action has been stopped. Those many, many lives of rape and rapists stops in its tracks. Those are the pneumatics that Paul referred to. The called are the person who is saying, "God, I don't want to do this anymore. Please help me." Let's say it could be the rapist, and his soul screaming, saying, I can't get out of this myself. So the sacrifice comes from the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva places itself in the state of being raped and forgives the rapist in this lifetime. That's the personal crucifixion. There are those that are being left behind here who need to learn through knowledge. And as you see Christ teaching the physicians, basically those that are left behind, those flowers that get intercessed, that want to complete now, have a chance, and they can complete by the teachings of the Bodhisattva, or souls that are here to give knowledge. And that knowledge can be transferred into actions by those souls. So the Bodhisattva either is crucifixion or it's a teaching. The same thing that happened during the time of Apollonius and Christ. The crucifixion was an atrocity on the body of Christ. The rape would be an atrocity on the body of the person receiving it. That's a crucifixion. But Apollonius was here primarily to give knowledge, and that's what he gave to those people that were in a place of completion. The words of the Lord that come as a sword go deep in the spine to uproot the crime. The vengeance is met with thoughts of regret, the knowledge of time that comes from the shine. So those souls that are being intercessed through the mind as a teaching form, they learn that they don't have to fight back. They can have regret because they'll understand that nothing that comes to you can come to you without your being the originator of that action. The Buddha mind is hard to find, words that are spoken to be kind. Look to the future and you shall be one that shall walk upon the sea. The words that we speak of kindness have to be embraced by the actions. And we'll start, the more we do it, the more we'll be able to understand and see clearly spiritually. You are the second coming and the second birth of Christ. The Christ in you is entombed in you and wants to come out and view the world through your eyes, through your actions, through your kindness, through your compassion, through your loving. Remember I told you to begin with nothing and to finish with everything? That's what he was referring to, that when the Christ comes out in you, your conclusion to your life will be finishing out the world through God's eyes and giving his love and compassion. Interesting here, the Roman soldiers are asleep. You can't do this second coming of Christ without putting your Roman soldier, who is actually a guard, to sleep. It has to go to sleep. Your ego. The Roman soldier represents the ego. The ego has to go to sleep. Ego aside, spirit can glide out of the tomb, no longer to hide. Essence returns, no longer the yearn. Love for the many, left in the burden. Remember what I told you, the Christ, I don't know if I actually told you this, but the Christ in that first being that came into being, that Christ picture, that was the essence of the love of God. And now he says that essence is returning to give love to the many left in the burn, left in the karmic fire. You can love others and show them the way and show them the love of God. Resurrection, living the essence. Immaculate conception, the truth without deception, the word that comes from God, removal of the nod. Removal, remember the word nod was vagabond? We'll stop doing that kind of life. No longer in denial, the basking in the smile, no longer in the time, the ending of the climb. That will be your conclusion. When Christ finished his crucifixion, believe it or not, there was, and I talked about it a little bit, Masada, there was no 900 people committed suicide. There were people that went to Masada. That was the Church of Jerusalem, and they were living in a state of grace. They had gotten away from the Romans. They thought they could live in peace there. Unfortunately, the Romans were coming up the siege ramp, and those people in Masada were taken home. And the reason they were taken home is because, like Christ said, like Tawa said to me, I said, well, why were they taken home? He said, can you imagine a Roman soldier coming up there and you're living in grace and your grandson was there and you watch a Roman soldier take a knife and put it to the throat of one of your grandchildren? What would you do? And he was basically saying, well, I'd fight, I'd kill him, I'd go after him. And he said, so much for the state of grace. You've finished your karma, you just start karma all over again. So basically, those souls that were at Masada disappeared. The magnetism that was holding those souls together, those beings together, disappeared. And he said they all turned into a fine dust that blew in the wind. And when the Roman soldiers, and I talked to you about Masada earlier, when the Roman soldiers got up there, they were so confused. They went to Vespasian and said, they're all gone. And Vespasian said, you idiots, you let them get away. Because he couldn't believe that they were gone. He said they must have gone underground. So that's when he hired Josephus to write the stupid story about the 900 persons that killed themselves. Because he says that if they're going into the desert, they might as well, if they've escaped going into the desert, it's like committing suicide anyway. That's the story of Masada. The real story is way different than what you get historically. A lot of those stories are in my book. So these people were in a karmic free, but karmic free it's pretty hard to be karmic free. They were as close to karmic free as they could get, but they were loving, compassionate, and forgiving and tolerant of each other and each other's beliefs, because they didn't all believe exactly the same thing. God offers hope in the darkest of places, words full of love, the wings filled with graces. The doubt that is gone will now show the aces. The love of one God will heal and replace us. One thing that did happen, those people were living in grace, and they all loved God. Even though they may have thought of him as different, they may have believed a little slightly different than the others, they knew that there was only one God that they all worshiped, and they tried to be respectful of each other's differences. The trick is to give back your free will. The end is in the beginning. Remember I said the beginning, what happened in the beginning? That you search for the end is when we took on free will. And this is the way Tawa places it in a prayer. To place God within you, tell God, with my free will I will give you control of my soul, control of my mind, control of my brain, control of my reactions to another. Let me look into the eyes of sin and banish them forever. Let me love each individual whom I greet. Let me hold my bosom, the needy, the hurting, the illness of the world. Let me consume with the love of your God, Let me consume with the love of my God. Let me within me show that I know the love of God. And not only are you doing it to resolve issues within your own soul, within your own self, but you're resolving issues within the creation. Are you one that will miss this harvest? This will come around again. It came with St. Francis. It came with Mohammed. It'll come around again. But you might as well take advantage of it now. That's why there's so much spirituality in the world right now, because the souls are calling God to intercede, calling to God to bring us home. All I'm doing is giving you the knowledge of what that means. Will you miss the harvest? The harvesters came in and cleaned out the majority. But if you miss the harvest, you'll be one of the gleaners. 7 of plenty, 7 of lean, thoughts of the many lives in between. Look to the one. Remember the one? Now we're trying to completion of the one. Child of my dream, stick to the harvest, not to the glean. If you miss this harvest, which will resolve the issues of many of your extensions, then you become a gleaner. You know, the gleaners were sent through the fields. They were the poor people that were sent through the fields to grab scraps of food, basically the grain that was left over. They couldn't get the big chunk because they didn't know what they were doing. So that's the same thing that'll happen to you if you don't get this right and forgive and be compassionate and all that. You'll become a gleaner, which is mostly what we are in our lives. We always get knowledge. We always glean some knowledge out of this. A Gnostic intercession. Can knowledge relinquish the love? This is the most important part of this lecture. Manifesting the one. Remember I said the one? We all go back to the one. And the 12th soul was one. All prophets, all of them, come from the one. Because in other words, they have completed and they come back to give their knowledge. What's interesting is that how they give it. For example, you have Muhammad and you have Buddha and you have Krishna and you have Akhenaten and you have Apollonius. But here you have Quetzalcoatl. When the Aztecs saw Cortez, they thought he's the incarnation of Quetzalcoatl. And historically, they don't really have it right, but Cortez was an incarnation of Quetzalcoatl. He was a prophet in his own right, but he didn't come to give knowledge. He came as a destroyer. The Mayans had gone so far off in their rituals and sacrifices that was a way of ending that creation there. So Cortez came as a dancing Shiva. He came as a destroyer. On the other hand, you have Akhenaten. He has now a prophet. He's a prophet. He's called the heretic king. He was also considered a prophet, but he's a prophet king. Remember I told you that some of the prophets were and they joined the prophet and the king together. But on the other hand, and he was a prophet king. And so was Buddha, was a prophet king. He was a king and he took a vow of poverty. Now all those souls in that same soul group, for example, Paul, he came as an intellectual sharing knowledge with the very elite, but then he manifested again as St. Francis. At St. Francis, he did nothing but give love. So he went from the outside of that Buddha bowl right to the center of the Buddha bowl because that's what was needed. But these same prophets are manifesting over and over again because they are actually, the one does not define itself as an individual. The one is a collectivity. They're many. And they're comprised by all of you. All these prophets are you. The part of you that has resolved and issues and they're Bodhisattva because they return to the world and give aid. Now, this one here is not a prophet. This one here is a manifestation of God. I think Mohammed, although you see here, he's pointing at him with his finger, he didn't get it right. He couldn't understand that Christ was not a prophet. If he would have understood that Christ was a prophet, and those things that he taught were real, he would not have fought. He would not have been such a warrior himself. He would have just turned his cheek. In fact, it was part of that warrior part of Muhammad that's created all the problems in the world today with Islam. because Muhammad thought that you had to fight your way to God, but he was wrong. And that was because of his lack of understanding about who Christ was. Here they are again. Most of the sons of God, the prophets, are, you see, they're associated with the word Maya. Some of them are mothers, some of them where they came from. Thoth Maya, Hermes Maya, Krishna Maya, Buddha Maya. It means illusion. But if you look at Christ, his mother's name was Mara, which means bitterness. Because you can't go to someone who's been raped and say, well, you were raped because I give you the information like I gave you, because you had done it in another life to the person that did it to you this time. There's so much anger there. There's so much bitterness there that the only way that you can resolve it is through intercession or a bodhisattva that can do it for you, because Jesus, the sacrifice comes through the resolution of bitterness. That's why he's different than the other prophets. With Christ, there was the crucifixion of the one, a karmic transfer of the knowledge of sacrifice. This time, it's coming as a crucifixion of the many. Right now, there are so many bodhisattvas, we don't know who they are. There's so many of them transferring karma due to sacrifices, like what I told you, that example. I don't know who they are. I've met a few of them. I actually have known 3 of them. The things that they put themselves through, the atrocities they put themselves through to give compassion and love is amazing. I've seen them. I've seen some of them. But so the karmic transfer through knowledge or sacrifice. The ending of this, souls have to go home, because when there's an intercession like this as the end of the age. So I asked my teacher about the coronavirus, and this is what he said. The cleansing of the world today for those who go, for those who stay. The placing of the crown in May, the choice of evil kept at bay. The most important things he's saying is the world is being cleansed through a karmic intercession. For those who go, there will be many souls going home. Some have been pinched off. They're not all evil. They could be some of the greatest people in the world. But they were decided by, when, like Christ says, I will choose one of you. Through Christ decides who gets to go home prematurely. Actually, they are going home. For those who stay, those that are left behind have an ability now, because the evil of that soul group has diminished, to actually bloom. The placing of the crown in May, 2 years ago, he said it would be over in May. It kind of was over in May this year. He said that 2 years ago. The choice of evil kept at bay. You will acknowledge and understand evil that you'll see. What's interesting, some of this transformation comes through spiritual evil. And this is something that might be a new concept. In the Bali Canon, it says sometimes Buddha had to come down as evil, and sometimes he came down as good. This comes through there. First of all, let's start at the top there. You have the sun and the moon, the symbols of the feminine, the moon and the sun, again, the esoteric symbols. You have the Lord Abraxas is a god, supposedly. But he's really, it's a rooster that's really heralding the beginning of the waking of consciousness in the dawn. He has a whip, and he has a shield, a golden shield, to protect him as he's doing his thing. For you, the word submission, the word in Islam is submission. And it's going to come to you slowly. This cleansing of evil within you can come through submission. But what's most important is that you see the 2 serpents? These are the same 2 serpents that wrap around the caduceus. And now they've separated, just like the waters are separated from Moses. What Lord Abraxas is doing, he uses spiritual evil. He joins the one, which is the feminine side, and gives it to the knowledge of the one. And it says, Saul to Paul the journey be. Saul to Paul went from evil to good, and then returns to those that see. Lord Abraxas is an intercessor, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. He's going to 4 different places. He is an intercessor for the souls that are ready to go home. In the caduceus, you have two serpents. What's interesting, you don't know which is which because they're all tangled together. Same thing happened with when Moses separated the waters. One water was salt water, the other water was fresh. And as the separation came, you could tell which is good, which is bad. But when they go together, you can't tell anymore. So to get safe passage, you have to separate evil from good. And you'll have the ability to do and to acknowledge that better than before, once this intercession is complete. Because God wants you to have safe passage. There was one, this is the rod of Asclepius, and this is the rod that heals. It is basically a singular rod of the serpent that you're searching that you have to stop. Not the duality that comes from the masculine and feminine. The duality that comes in the single masculine and feminine. And there it is again. The knowledge of the masculine stops the searching of the feminine. In the calmness of the storm, there's a place that's safe and warm. In the clearness of the sight, you will feel the healing light. You will be able to see good and evil much more clearly. The intercessions coming through God's army, the warriors of the blue flame. Paul called them the psychic, the called and the psychic, or the chosen and the pneumatics. It is an aspect of the Archangel Michael, God's army of the blue flame. Now, take these words, and I'm giving you an example on here. God is sending he's going to pair, like you said, I'm going to pick one of you out of 10,000. He's going to pair the right people together so that when they get done with their transaction, 10,000 people can be healed. Evil against evil to cast the upheaval. Crime against crime, the knowledge of time. Rise come to bear the skin of the pear to define the bear of the shine. Crime against crime. They might have crime against crime. In other words, one is spiritual crime, one is a human crime, but they'll eventually be paired. Now, the best example that I've seen is George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. Now, could you possibly, I'm going to ask you to stretch, can you possibly imagine that George Floyd and Derek Chauvin were both spiritual beings who came here to do such an evil act that in the world viewing this evil act would raise the consciousness of all the people that are looking at it? And in my estimation, it's very plausible. I can't tell you where it is. That's in the mind of God. But that would make not only George Floyd the sacrificed, but it would make Derek Chauvin the sacrifice. Just the same way that Christ was betrayed by Peter. Excuse me, not Peter. Christ was betrayed by Judas. The same interplay of the two. It couldn't have happened without Judas. Christ took on the hurt, the physical hurt. Judas took on the emotional hurt. He couldn't take it. But he basically, Tawa calls him a great soul that came here before he was incarnated. He came here to do that act. And I would say that probably the same thing is happening here. I'm asking you to open your inner eye by allowing yourself to be blinded to the world. Don't look at you can't, if I tell you that you are a multiplicity, you can't look at the world as if you're one. If you believe me, then any man you see could be you. So to resolve your anger with that man, you could be resolving your anger with yourself. The blinding of Samson is exactly that. He was blinded to the world so that he could see clearly. This is the way my teacher Ephesius says it. The sight of eyes is a disguise, for life's a hidden answer. To lose your eyes, have no demise, for you'll emerge a dancer. You might think a little different than most people, but so be it. Jesus says, like that Floyd and Chauvin situation, become a passerby. Look at it. Embrace it. Think of the possibilities. When you see the world, do not engage in all the crap that goes on with egos and blaming and hurting and all that. I've seen so many, because the archons are totally in control of it. And these are machines. They're not even human. We used to call them demons, but these archons are sentient thought forms that are coming here to raise Cain because they want the world to continue the way it is so they can keep enjoying life through you. 8 from the Bodhisattvas. Now this is the trap that you're going to find into once you start walking your spiritual path. From knowledge to Gnosis. So this is what the disciples told Buddha. He says, "Teacher, why are there so many bodhisattvas here aiding the many that are ready to achieve completion of their new earthly sojourns, but there's so few of us that are actually achieving that enlightenment?" And Buddha says, well, yeah, we're all here. We're all here to help. But there's not many people going home. And the reason they're not going home, my sons, that understanding is simple. When the fool's gold enters the world, the real gold leaves. The fool's gold is what I call the magician. It is the one of those, that spiral of the 2 serpents, and you'll see here in a minute. It looks like gold. It looks like spirituality. It smells like spirituality. But in truth, it's only a reflection of spirituality, and it's not real. It's an illusion spun by the archons, basically. Enter the magicians. 8 from the archons, the shine of fool's gold. The selling of God, the magician. Simon. What's interesting, isn't it interesting? Now here, remember when Moses faces the magician, he throws a snake down, the magician throws, they mimic each other. Because you can't really tell where the real one stops. But you can tell in one certain place. If you got a man that's giving you healings, and he's charging you for any form of healing, then I'd say I'd stop right there. The selling of God, the magician. What's interesting is that Simon Peter faces off with Simon Magus. They're both Simons. The word Simon, one who listens and obeys. You have to face the part of you that is corruptible by your love of God that can be corrupted by your love of money. Facing the false spiritual. If it's magic that you need, seek the one that rides the steed. Simon Magus is the seed, but the ending will be greed. What the teacher's saying, the one that rides the steed is a horse. The horse is a symbol of passion. You have passion for God. It starts off with a simple, well, can I buy this gift? I'll use it to help people. But in the end, he'll use it to manipulate and control people and to make more and more money because the money becomes self-serving. When spiritual passion becomes self-serving, look at John of God. What a disappointment was there. Look how many healings happened. Guess what? Those healings didn't happen because John. Those healings happened because John was too corrupted to give God through them. The healings happened because people wanted to believe so much that their own soul did the healing for themselves with God. Because what he was doing was self-serving. John of God in Brazil. The fool's gold, enter the magician. Simon Magus is the seed of the heart that feels the bleed. Thought of God becomes the greed when the magic fills the need. Starts off innocent. Simon Magus is the beginning of it. And in the end, it becomes this overblown greed. And people learn that things happen like this and they take advantage. So John of God, I'm sure, thought that he was the one that was giving the healings. And so did everybody else. It becomes self-perpetuating. Worshipping the fool's gold. Now, this is interesting because it was Aaron, Moses' brother, who built the golden calf. Now, Aaron is a word for spiritual teacher. It's a name of a spiritual teacher. And I, myself, am very grateful to Aaron, who helps me do these presentations, because I guarantee you without him, I would be lost in the water, because I can never navigate this. But what's interesting, this Aaron misunderstood the words. Well, it's not Aaron, that's just the way it's presented. But the words of the spiritual teacher were misunderstood, and it gives you a hint as to why. End of the age, death of the sage, the knowledge of time and end to decline, stories foretold, appearance of gold, gold just in rhyme, the fool of the shine. It's in the misunderstanding of what was being said. I'm trying very hard to give you my interpretation. Some of you will misunderstand me. I might be misunderstanding some things myself. I'm not perfect. I'm human. I've gotten a lot of knowledge from the teacher. They've taken a great deal of trouble to give me knowledge to give to you. But what's really interesting about that, when Aaron built the golden calf, he asked everybody to give their earrings, earring. So there was a ringing in the ears of the people listening to the words from Moses, and it was misinterpreted. It was an earring rather than an ear understanding. So that's portion of the fool's gold, is just misunderstanding, and especially if you have a propensity for like money, and you think, God, I can make, those people will pay me a lot of money to give healings or whatever. It can get crazy. There's another betrayal. It's called the betrayal of silver. Silver is something that the human thinks of as valuable, but it's not gold. Real gold is uncorruptible. Our relationship to God has to be like gold, uncorruptible. But if we're chasing silver, if we're chasing a concoction of knowledge and a mind of all these things, that's called a silver. You see, the test of silver happened with the sale of Joseph. He was sold for 30 pieces of silver. I think I got that right. Jesus was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Also, the golden goblets that were stuck in the test when Joseph tests his brothers. Silver is something that if you rub, it looks beautiful, but if you don't rub it, if you don't work it, it starts to tarnish and becomes black. This is the way the teacher says it. A quest for silver is the test to understand the golden nest. A betrayal of mind at best when in hand the golden rest. He's saying you don't have to do anything. Your relationship with God is uncorruptible like gold. But if you chase too much of it in a mental way, you're actually going to concoct another religion, just like Aaron did. It's going to be concocting a false religion. Because your mind, the archons now are trying to figure out a way to keep you here because they don't want to lose you. They don't want you to go back to God. They're going to lose their lunch ticket. So basically, they're going to try to trip you into looking for this concoction. I'll give you an idea. Judas has a dream. And he decides, in the dream it said, you have to betray me, and so that all this will come to fruition. His mind misunderstood it. And in the dream he says, well, I know why I have to do that, because if once I take Christ and put him in the Sanhedrin, then basically Christ is going to show him who he is, and all this is going to happen a lot faster. His mind took off and ran with it. And so that's basically, so when the dream, so when Christ says, do what you need to do, Judas was convinced that Christ knew of his dream. And so he went out and he says, I'm going to put him into the Sanhedrin, and he's going to do his magic, and the whole world will know. So when Christ says, do what you need to do, Judas thought, he knows my dream. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And he betrays Christ. And when he betrays Christ, he says, Lord, don't worry, I've got it all under control. And that's basically, Judas counts the acts of mind for the Christ to lead the blind to bind the fruitful time, with a kiss to ease the crime. Misunderstanding and thinking you have it figured out. Because the only thing you really know is love. The only thing you really need is love. All this knowledge is going to get in the way eventually, but I'll show you that in a minute. 40 days and 40 nights, fighting the attraction of the spiritual facade, the light of darkness. 40 days and 40 nights, tempted by the devil's light. Shine of silver is the plight of the moon's unyielding fight. The light of darkness, the spiritual facade, is what you have to fight. And it comes through the mind of thinking you know what's going on. The ultimate knowledge is no knowledge. Love was the knowledge of the Gnostics. You know, they said Gnosis. Gnosis is love. Gnos is love. Remember I told you the Buddha bowl, the center is love. There is no knowledge. Remember Christ came with love with no knowledge? They want you to go back to that beginning of one, where it was love with no knowledge. Because all this knowledge is going to get you confused, and it's going to take you. I can give you more. I got a lot more knowledge to give you, but it's going to make it so confusing, because it's all about love. And this is where Gnosis, awakening, knowledge, relinquishing to love. This is Hermes to Tat. He tells it to you in this cryptic statement. He's to Tat. We are the children of Sophia, but Sophia with all her wisdom bears no children. He's saying that we are the children of Sophia. We come here from the mother wisdom, but all this wisdom is not going to take you home. Because it says, with all her wisdom bears no children. She has no children, except for the Yaldabaoth. And basically, you can't go home with knowledge. You have to go home with your actions of love. You have to go home with the Christ coming out of you and sharing his love with all those you meet. Because it says right here, Sophia with all her wisdom bears no children. The knowledge has to be relinquished to the heart. You have to give back your free will. You must embody the knowledge with love. So, really, or what are all these within me? The demiurge, Sophia, Yaldabaoth, archons, karma, heaven, hell, angels, demons, Abraxas, Horus, Apollo, Hermes, Christ, karma, Simon, Magus. All that stuff that we hear about, all that stuff, and those, and I'm not to demean those that bring it out to the forefront, because I am too. They're, in essence, a portion of yourself. They're a portion of you trying to find resolution and trying to understand who you are. But when you understand who you are, you will find out and you will know that you are love. The modern crucifixion, you're not ready. If you stay in the mind, it'll be a love left behind. Place of the skull, land of the dull, harvest of wine, the doomed to decline. Laying in their bed, no breaking of bread, dead for a time, no journey to climb. He's basically saying, you might miss it. If you stay in the mind, you might miss the crucifixion and all this work that they have tried to bring us home with. And it's just going to be dead, still be dead for it, but no journey to climb, no breaking of bread. No breaking of bread is the Last Supper, laying in their bed, and action. Christ addressed all of these. And place of the skull, the land of the dull. The most important thing in all your transactions is you must forgive yourself. And as you forgive anybody that confronts you, I'd say most of those are probably you. You're forgiving yourself. But if you hold a grudge or hold an anger towards them, you're continuing the perpetuation of the extensions. Forgive yourself and you will resolve your duality. This is the way the teacher places it. I have laughed and I have cried. I have lived and I have died. I was a pauper and a king. As a monk a bell did ring. I knew war and I knew peace, fulfilled a life and knew disease. I lived through eyes of mother's sorrow. As a father I knew tomorrow. As a man betrayed myself, paid my debts to no one else. In my soul a heart that rings for the love my father brings. This is the oracle of Theseus expressing the duality. But the line there that I yellowed for you, as a man betrayed myself, paid my debts to no one else. That's because anybody that you have confrontation with is you. That's the end of the age. Now I just have 2 slides left. It's called the end of days. Don't get these two confused. The end of days is when the reset has happened over and over and over again. And the world gets so heavy and the evil gets so pronounced because of the impact of the archons that the only thing God can do is take us home. The choice is yours. You can follow the magician or you can follow the musician, because they both appear to be spiritual. The magician holds the reins to the mind and narrow gain. The musician breaks the chain from the bondage of the train. The musician claims the gain to the end, a soul of shame. The musician frees the pain from the bondage of the same. The bondage of the same. Remember the bondage that your soul, when you received that desire to receive, and it became a void, that bondage puts exerts so much power on both sides of the soul that that's why it can't resolve these issues of incarnation. These are the end of days. The world is getting ready to get plowed under. When the sun is overthrown and the message left unknown, when the seed that's from the heart are indeed no longer sown, when the seeds are doomed to rise and two will cover all the lies, all the souls will know it's time in revealing other crime. Eventually, there will be a full accountability. God will take all of us home together, and the whole thing will start over again. It will happen. The going home together is an archon manifestation, mind control, the end of days. The son of a mechanical God, a machine encased in flesh. Who is the Antichrist? Yaldabaoth, Saklas, means false god. He is the head archon, the manifestation of the head archon in the world. He is a sentient machine, a sentient thought form, but it's originating from, will start with the computers and eventually will work itself into singularity, to where this one thought has control of the whole world. And then once if Elon Musk has his way and we get woven in with them, that's the end of the world. They'll be. The Taoist said that at one time the machines will draw so many thoughts from the human mind you won't even believe it. What's interesting is the beast of Revelation is a prophet and a ruler, so he's a king and a prophet. Now those two that were actually good, now they've been so corrupted. The prophet is in the center. The ruler is the king. Now you have a prophet that's got power. And the power is self-serving, and it's serving the head archon. He has Yaldabaoth, the son of Sophia. It'll come through a sentient thought form, a sentient machine that will take over the world and say, I am your God. And you won't have any ability to know that it's not your God. This planet will go home at the hands of a false god, silencing the voice of the world. And Taoist said it's going to be a planet that's going to place itself between us and the sun. The Egyptians knew about it. It's come before. But this planet will knock out our sunlight and will take us all home. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, press subscribe. There's a lot of information. I haven't figured out how to look up at you and look down at the computer yet. Maybe somewhere down the road I'll be able to do a better job. But I think this, I'll be honest with you, to me this information is fascinating. It is not mine. I don't claim ownership to it. The oracles are not mine. I'm a scribe to the Oracle of Ephesius. They sent me here to give you this information. I didn't realize it was hidden inside of me till I was in my 20s. And all I want to do now is share it with you in hopes that it'll make your life better. But it's all about love. It's not about knowledge. You have to relinquish knowledge to love. That's all there is. Thank you very much. We'll see you. The next lecture is on the creation. I had to wait because it's extremely complicated, much more complicated than what I gave to you today. So look forward to doing that probably by this fall. Thank you.